Hello, this topic is analyzing graphs. We're going to be looking at different graphs of different functions and finding the domain, range, x and y intercepts, increasing, decreasing, maxes, mins, and behavior of graphs. So the first couple, the domain and the range, should be somewhat familiar to us. The domain is your x values. We're going to go from left to right. So on the left is going to be negative infinity. On the right is going to be positive infinity, and that's if there's arrows going to the left and to the right. So this graph has arrows both going to the left and to the right. Even though the arrows are going down, they're still going left and right. So we're going to write that as negative infinity, comma, positive infinity. You'll notice anything that has an infinity will always have a parentheses. So if you have an infinity, you're always going to use a parentheses where either on the left side or the right side, wherever that infinity is. If you have a number, like we will in our range, you're going to have to figure out if you're going to use a parentheses or a bracket. So let's look at the range first and then come back to that idea of parentheses or bracket. Range is your y values from low to high. So if your arrows go down for forever, that's going to be negative infinity. If your arrows go up for forever, that's positive infinity. Again, this was down. This is up. So for this graph, notice here our graph goes down for forever because we have arrows pointing downwards. That means we're going to be going down towards negative infinity, and that's going to have a parentheses. And then up, our graph does not go up for forever, but it rather has a height here that you don't surpass. This maximum height here is 8. So our graph gets up to 8, but does not go past 8. So for 8, you can either have a parentheses or a bracket. You have to decide which one is correct. This one here, we have to ask ourselves, does our graph actually touch 8? Does it get up to a height of 8? And the answer is yes, which means it's a bracket. If your answer got close to 8, like something like this, but never actually touched it, that's when you'd use a parentheses. Your x-intercepts are going to be where your graph crosses the x-axis. We are always going to write these as coordinate points. So these ones here happen at -1, 0, and then at 3, 0. My y-intercepts are where my graph crosses the y-axis. So that happens up there at 6. It's going to also be written as a ordered pair. So I am going to write this as 0, 6. So my x-intercepts are always going to be some number, 0. And my y-intercepts are always going to be 0, some number. Okay, so let's move on to the next section, maximums and minimums, and a relative max and min, and all of this stuff. So the first thing is we have to look for turning points on our graph. So our graph, if I were to take and trace it, so watch the cursor here. I'm going to start all the way on the left of my graph, and I'm going to trace it. Notice how my graph here is going up, and then it changes to going down, and then it changes again and it goes back up, kind of like a roller coaster here. So it goes up, then down, then up again. So wherever we actually turned is going to be a maximum or a minimum. It's going to be a turning point. So for this one, we have a total of 2 turning points. And wherever we go from going up to down, that is going to be a high point. That's going to be a maximum. Anywhere we go from going down to going back up, that is going to be a minimum because it is a low point compared to the ones around it. It's not necessarily the lowest or highest point on the graph. It's just lower or higher compared to the ones around it. It's kind of like a big fish in a little pond idea. So for this one, the minimum occurs at whatever that coordinate point is. 1, -5 was our low point. Our maximum happened over at -2, 3. That's when we went from going up to going down. So now what we're going to do is we're going to use these turning points when we are identifying increasing and decreasing. So the very first thing I would recommend you doing is exactly what we did on the last one. You're going to trace your graph, always go from left to right, left to right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the left here, and I'm going to notice this chunk right here, it is going up. And then just like before, this next chunk here, I turned because that was my turning point, and now I went down. And then my last one, I turned again at my turning point, and now I'm going up again. So you have two places where you're increasing or going up, and you have two places where, or one place where you are decreasing or going down. So the first thing is to identify, are you increasing or are you decreasing? After that, we have to figure out how to write it. So that is the trickiest part of this, is writing out your increasing and decreasing. For these ones, we are looking only at the x values, which means I don't care how high or how low this graph is going. I care left to right. Where is it going up and where is it going down? So here's what I'm going to do. At the top of my graph, I'm going to draw my number line. I'm going to erase these other ones so we can see it up there. On the left of your number line, if you look at this number line here, this is your x-axis. On the left, your numbers are getting negative, more negative. So that's going to be negative infinity over there. On the right, your values are getting more positive, so that's going to be a positive infinity. Okay, so your number line always has negative infinity on the left and positive infinity on the right. Now what we're going to do is we are going to actually figure out where we turned here, and we're going to chop up our number line with these x values. Okay, so this x value here was when x was negative 2. This x value here was when x was 1. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull my labels up here. This was going up, then down, then up again. And so now what I can do is I can use these values to do my increasing and decreasing. So my increasing, I'll do this with the green, increasing was this chunk and this chunk, which we can see in our graph as well. Okay, so from left to right, what we're going to do is we're going to use the negative infinity until it stops going up when x is negative 2. So this is the first interval from negative infinity to negative 2. And then all of a sudden it starts again when x is 1 and to the right for forever. So my increasing is from negative infinity to negative 2, and then again from 1 and to positive infinity. I'll do another video with another example of these in your practice problems just to help a little bit more. Your decreasing then is going to be this chunk in the middle here where you're going down. You went down in between these two x values. When x was negative 2, oop, it's not writing, sorry. There we go. When x was negative 2, and then when x is 1. So your decreasing interval happens in between these x values from negative 2 to negative 1. So that's increasing and decreasing. And again, I'll do more videos with increasing and decreasing and the rest of the stuff coming here because it is brand new stuff for us. So what we're going to do is we are going to start with your graph here. Where is your graph greater than 0? Is asking where is your graph above the x-axis. And so looking at this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line along the x-axis. And you'll notice it actually touches at these intercepts here, -4, 0, and 2. So those are going to be the numbers that we are going to use, -4, 0, and 2. So we are looking for where our graph is above. So looking at our graph, I can see two different parts. I see this part right here, and then this part right here. So we're again going to use our interval notation. And so this first chunk here is in between the x value of -4 and 0. So I'm going to use parentheses because we're just looking at above. Where I start being above is at -4, and then it goes back to 0 at 0. And then there's a break for a while. But then where it happens again, this U means union. It means and, basically. So in between -4 and 0, and again here when x is -2 or at +2. So it starts again at 2 and goes to the right for forever. Anytime you're going to the right, you're going towards positive infinity. Now we're going to look at where your graph is below. So there's going to be a couple of different chunks below here. So we have this one right here I see below the x-axis, and this one right here as well. So we have two different parts. So our graph starts with this arrow going to the left. Anytime you have an arrow going to the left, it's at negative infinity. So you're going to start all the way at the left, which is negative infinity, and then it stops, it crosses over when x is -4. And then it's above for a little bit, but we're looking for below, so it goes back below when x is 0, and then stops again when x is 2. So we have our above and we have our below. Our last new thing is going to be this idea of end behavior. It's what is happening on the left and what's happening on the right. So this right here, what this means, I'm going to type it out so you can kind of clearly see it here. This means as you go to the right. Okay, so as you go to the right, where's the graph going? The graph is going, and you're supposed to figure out where your graph is actually going. And so on this graph in particular, as you look at the right, I'm going to go ahead and highlight this now in yellow. That's this, oops, sorry. That's this part right here. As you go to the right, you can look at it and you can say your graph is going up. So if you are saying up for any of these, that's going to be positive infinity. If you ever say down, the graph is going towards negative infinity. So since as we go to the right, our graph is going up, that means we're going to positive infinity. Now this next one here, I'm going to highlight it in green. So as x goes to negative infinity, that is not going to mean to the right anymore. It's going to mean the same thing, but it's going to mean to the left. So as I'm looking at this one, what I can do is I can use the same idea where I'm looking at as I go to the left, where is my graph actually going? So if I trace my graph on the left, I can see my graph is going down, and since it's going down, it's going to negative infinity. So I can fill in negative infinity here. So again, I'm going to recopy this down here one more time. As you go to the right, my graph was going up towards positive infinity. As I went to the left, my graph went down towards negative infinity. So thank you very much. I hope this helped. I will continue to do more about analyzing graphs because I know this is a lot of new information. The best thing we could do is just keep on practicing. So I hope this went well. Let me know if you have questions. Thanks.